Are my judges ready? A former First Lady once said, "Whether I'm meant to or not, I challenge assumptions about women. I do make some people uncomfortable, which I am well aware of. But that's just part of coming to grips with what I believe is still one of the most important pieces of unfinished business in human history, empowering women to stand up for themselves." Good evening, my name is Liliya Dudko, and I am an advocate for female empowerment. The gap in the equality of the sexes is caused by the idea that women are viewed as weaker, less intelligent, and inferior to males, and the struggles that women had to overcome in their progression to gain the same rights that white males were born with can be traced throughout history. In 1865, the United States Senate office chose not to include the word equality in the 13th Amendment on Senator Jacob Howard's forewarning that including equality would mean that before the law, a woman would be equal to a man. A woman would be as free as a man before the law. That decision showed the severity of unwillingness that men had toward giving females the fundamental rights which they freely enjoyed and was the foundation that females had to build on. Females set out to secure their liberties, and as a result came the 19th Amendment, which was the starting point for enacting remedial legislation. The 19th Amendment provided women with the right to vote and thus further prompted their desire to be equal to males. During World War II, employers were forced to hire females because the men were off at war. Following the war, female participation in the workforce continued to amplify. Studies found increasing American acceptance and support of the idea of the working woman outside the home, and up until the 1990s, America stood out among developed countries for its higher female labor force participation rate. Regrettably, this increased participation rate did not mean that women were being treated equal to their male counterparts, and thus, females were faced with another battle: equal pay. Females again set out to secure their liberties, and as a result came the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which sought to eliminate sex-based wage discrimination and secure equal pay for both sexes, as well as Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which sought to eliminate discrimination based on sex. Despite these various governmental efforts, women did not receive their desired goal, and to this day continue to make a fraction of the pay that men earn. Quantified, females make 82.1% of men's earnings. Compared to previous decades, when the average weekly earnings gap narrowed 9.7% from 1984 to 1993 and 3.1% from 1994 to 2013, the gap has narrowed only 1.7% in the last decade. In 2012, the forward movement came to a halt. And although women's median weekly earnings increased by $5 to $706, at the same time, men's median weekly earnings increased to $860, a marginal increase of $7. It is argued that more women choose to stay at home and raise a family, instead of raising a career. This means that they will be not hired into higher paying jobs and create a wage gap. This, however, is not the case, because as of 2017, more women are getting bachelor's degrees than men, yet there are still cases in which a man and a woman with the same background working in the same occupation get paid different wages. In addition to earning lower wages, females are statistically less likely to hold high-ranking positions in companies. Twice as many of the most proactive men rise to senior-level executive positions as similar women. And studies have found even 1 year out of college, men getting higher raises than women, creating an already 7% pay gap. Studies aimed at discovering the reasoning behind these promotions, specifically focusing on whether or not women asked to be promoted, concluded that just as many, if not more women asked to be promoted, they simply were not granted them. Some numbers were as follows. 47% of women and 52% of men asked for a higher salary during the hiring process, and 14% of women and 15% of men asked for a higher position during the hiring process, yet men received those positions 2 times more. Earning lower wages and lower ranking positions is not the only concern of the working woman. Women experience degrading situations that range from sexual harassment to sexual assault on a daily basis in the work environment. And it is not uncommon for a woman to experience harassment prior to being fired. 1 in 8 women are the target of a sexually hostile work environment, and women working in male-dominated fields are most likely to experience gender discrimination or assault. This explains why most women who file sexual harassment claims are ones who have received some level of higher education. The idea of solving these ongoing issues is not one that is easy to accomplish, yet it is one that needs to be done. Solving the pay gap does not have to come at the expense of men's exploitation. Both men and women need to make economic gains. The gains that females make simply need to be larger than those of men. This theory was demonstrated in the years between 1980 and 2000, when women's median weekly earnings increased and men's did not. Solving the issue of harassment is a separate battle. Officer Glenn Moore reported that a woman who is being harassed has to first let her harasser know that she does not feel comfortable in the situation. If the harassment continues, she has to report her assailant, because men who get reported are less likely to continue more of such behavior. Steve Dunlap, a Willow Springs former administrator, as well as current human rights activist who fights to help women of human trafficking, reported that women who lack self-confidence, possess poor self-esteem, and are low-functioning are easier targets for sexual predators. Dunlap's comment inspired me to make my senior project a girl self-defense course, with the focus being to disprove the age-old idea that being strong is not feminine, while empowering young women to be able to pursue and gain their goals. My class was a 4-week program that focused on the basics of girl self-defense. The first class was taught by Steve Dunlap, and his focus was on situational awareness, specifically focusing on what type of people and places to avoid. That same day, the girls were asked to rate themselves 0 to 10 on their knowledge of self-defense. The highest score that I received was a 4. Those following 2 Mondays were taught by Jerry Wickens. They focused on situations in which the girl was standing up, techniques on how to escape if someone grabs your arm, if someone chokes you from the front or the back, if someone grabs you by the belt, and so on. Those following Thursdays were taught by Officer Glenn Moore, and they focused on situations in which the girl was on the ground, focusing on techniques on how and when to escape using moves like the turtle and the hip arch. The final date was a test date to see what all the girls had retained. They were put against strong attackers, had to defend themselves on the ground and standing up, and had to attack their assailants. The final day, the girls were also asked to rate themselves again, 0 to 10, on their knowledge of self-defense. To my delight, I received several 10s, as well as saw an overall increase in their ratings. My project was not an easy one for me to accomplish, yet it is one that allowed me to learn and grow from it. The greatest struggle that I overcame was figuring out a schedule that worked for everyone. I had 3 teachers teaching my classes who all have very complex and different schedules. I had to get in contact with them and figure out what days and times would work best. Then I had to use those times to go to Terry Elmore at the YMCA and figure out how we can incorporate those times into her schedule. Another struggle that I overcame was being able to promote an event this large. In order to promote my event, I put up flyers in both the middle and high school, as well as businesses around town that would allow it. The final struggle that I overcame was making sure that my girls participated in my classes time and time again. The more girls that showed up, the more repetitions each of them got against several different partners, thus learning the move better. Because I wanted as many girls to learn as much as they could, I tried to keep the information that was being taught in the classes interactive and interesting. Despite the various governmental efforts and movements that have been set in place, empowering women to stand up for themselves remains a necessity in the society in which we live. To this day, females receive lower wages, are less likely to hold high-ranking positions, and are more likely to experience harassment, sexual or otherwise, simply because they are females. Gender should not limit opportunities. A woman needs to know that she needs to embrace her strengths. She has to know that she is smart, she is strong, she is intelligent. She has to know that her gender does not limit her opportunities. She has to know how to defend herself. She has to know that she will not be a victim. Thank you. Do I just have any questions? Yes.
Was this your first choice?
I did like anyone else would. I dabbled with several different options, but I knew that doing this project would be most beneficial to me and to the girls in this area, and I wanted them to learn these moves before they exit out into the real world. Yes.
What are your plans after high school?
I plan to go to West Plains for 2 years, and then I'm going to transfer to Mizzou and do 2 more years there, and I'm going to go into law school and become a lawyer and help women specifically, but also men. Yes. Okay. Oh, no, in the back.
It's just kind of interesting that you picked this, I know, last fall early. And then this is all we've seen on TV and heard, over the last few months. Kudos to you.
What was your favorite part about teaching this class?
I think my favorite part was being able to just experience the whole thing, because I was actually learning and teaching at the same time for my project. So like days whenever we had an odd number, I would learn the move and then I would help the girls learn the move. But if we had an even number, I would be a partner with someone and I would just be learning it with them. So it was a very different experience, and I had never encountered anything like that in my life. And it was very eye-opening, and it was just empowering and amazing, and I loved it.
Did you say how many girls showed up?
It fluctuated a lot.
What was the most you had?
The most I had was like 22, and then a different day, because of sports and other events, I had 4 show up. So it varied greatly. Yes.
You seem very convicted in this. Is this something that is it kind of changed your life studying this?
I'm very passionate about empowering women to begin with, but I definitely feel like researching this topic and knowing this information, I feel like it helped really set in that this is definitely what I am passionate about, and I want to set out to empower other women to know that they don't have to be victims. They have to be strong, they have to be smart, they have to know their worth.
How would you define a fully empowered woman?
I believe there are different ways to be considered empowered. I feel like it depends on a woman, but I feel like confidence is the one word that I would use. If you are confident in yourself, if you're confident in what you believe, then you are empowered. It doesn't matter if what you believe people think it's right or wrong. I feel like if you're confident in it, then you are empowered. Anyone else? Thank you.